We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast, special Friday edition, because one of us here has a birthday this weekend, and I'm assuming, I didn't ask you, but I'm assuming it's because you're having a little birthday weekend for yourself.
Yeah, busy weekend scheduled. Just stuff going on, different days, doing stuff with family one day, doing stuff with friends another day. Just a busy weekend all in all. It made more sense for us to do this show today. So there you go.
Yeah, and I think, it's fun because this is very convenient with how the NFL has decided to schedule some of their games for week one. Because one of the four teams that is not playing on a Sunday. Well, there's more than four teams playing on Sunday because you have the Monday night game, but Monday night games
playing prior to Sunday.
Yeah, the prior Sunday games. We're going to talk about that. That's going to close out our show. We're going to do the picks are back. It's been Michael. It's been over 6.5 months since we picked a football game with the spread.
Yeah,
that obviously being the Super Bowl, but
yeah, so we have just two games to pick because we'll be able to do a show betwixt the two games on Thursday and Friday, and then the rest of the weekend of week one. We'll be able to do a show in between, talk about the games that occurred with the new picks, that sort of thing. So that's the little outlook for the next 8 or 9 days.
Yeah, we're going to talk picks. I know we did a fantasy football kind of like a segment.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even picked my team yet. I'm picking my team next week. So
yeah, same. My draft is not until
I think once we
as late as it can go.
When we have a little more time to ourselves, I think we will also talk during the picks, maybe like fantasy, stardom, sit-em, not for every.
But maybe some implications for
some obvious implications. If it's like the two worst teams and you have players on those teams. Oh boy,
sweating it out. Yeah,
that sounds like a major sweat. But anyway, before we start talking to football, Michael, just very briefly, R.I.P. Johnny and Matt Goudreau. The news broke this morning. You messaged me at 7 a.m. about that, before it was announced, and I was just literally like, what?
Yeah, last night, tragedy struck in Salem County, New Jersey. The report initially came out that two men on bicycles were hit by a car and died. Then rumors started swirling, maybe not right, that the initial report tweet that it was potentially Johnny Goudreau. That definitely was not right to do before it was confirmed. But rumors were swirling for hours upon hours last night. Before this morning, it was officially confirmed that it was Johnny and his brother Matthew. Truly a terrible story. One of the worst for that I've heard of in my lifetime of a current professional athlete. Just an awful story in general. Two brothers out having a night before their sister's wedding, which would have been today. Just truly the awful, awful, awful tragedy.
Yeah, and just from what we've learned is that him and his brother were just hanging out, riding bikes together, no different than, they're both, one's a former athlete. One was, currently he's an NHL All-Star. Just wanted to hang out with his brother. before the wedding. Obviously, they're really happy, and then someone driving way too fast. We don't really know much of the details. If he was riding bikes outside his home, it's a strong chance it was a residential area, and you're not really supposed to drive fast. You're only supposed to drive, at least around here in the Philly burbs, it's like 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, just clearly, whatever. It's just it's awful. Can't imagine, but truly
Yeah,
terrible. A really inspiring player. Johnny was for a lot of other, Johnny Gaudreau being an undersized player that wasn't a highly, super high draft pick that really had to grind and work hard to have the successful career that he had, was a great inspiration to a lot of young players, especially a lot of younger, more undersized players, showing that it can be done at the NHL level, all that sort of
he
stuff.
reminded me a lot of former Flyer Mark Recchi, undersized guy that could score a lot of goals, get a lot of
Mhm.
points.
Yeah.
Very popular with his teammates. Yeah, dude, it's really
Loved by
sick.
the fans, really good dude,
Loved by the
just
fans. Seems like a really good guy, and you just feel bad for him. It goes out to his
and his
family,
family,
especially
yeah,
his wife and his two
it's
two. One's an infant, the other's a toddler. Dude, it's just really
it's horrible.
it is. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Talk about the Phillies because I know Johnny Gaudreau would have from if he's from the area, he's a big Philly sports fan. I know he would love what's kind of going on with the Phillies right now.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, last night, not looking good for a little bit, and then they're down 4-0, and then Brandon Marsh, who I've been recently been maligning because he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. Um,
Huge
hit a
hit for him.
3-run ding dong
Yeah, truly,
off a 95-year-old Charlie Morton.
yeah, total managerial disaster class from Brian Snitker there. Morton was at 100 pitches when Marsh came up. Uh, no reason to not bring in Aaron Bummer there, who was kind of warming up. And at the very least, you force Thompson to consider and potentially make the switch, bringing in like Weston Wilson. And if you're the Braves, I mean, you got to take Weston Wilson at bat over a Brandon Marsh at bat any day. Especially, Marsh has struggled for a decent bit,
Yeah, but
but
Weston Wilson is like a quadruple A
that's what
player.
I'm saying. I mean, and it's also like Brandon Marsh's last 14 games is hitting like 330, slugging like up over 600. Like he's been really, really good for about like 2 weeks now. Um, he's just been hitting the ball a lot harder and things have been going his way. And total mistake on Snicker's part to leave in Morton. Hangs the curveball. I thought he got under it a little bit too much, but it carried up out. And listen, that didn't even, that just got the Phillies back in the game, made it 4-3. Some big defensive plays to keep, the lead where it was for the Phillies. And until the seventh inning, Nick Castellanos going dead center to put the Phillies on top 5-4 and ultimately getting them the win. It was the game, like the worst part of the game being Alec Boehm rolling his wrist and leaving the game with a left hand injury. They seem pretty optimistic about it. X-rays were negative, etc. But you look at the game. I mean, like Christopher Sanchez made two fairly bad pitches to Matt Olson. That Matt Olson hit a combined nearly 900 feet of home runs with two of them. But other than that, Sanchez actually I thought looked really, really good. 8 strikeouts through 5 2/3, only one walk. Scattered a lot of like BS hits, around the two home runs. But he
I
looked
mean,
really good,
I mean, he
definitely.
did. He was. I don't think he had a bad start yesterday. He had 2 earned runs,
Yeah,
but
Turner making the error before the 2-run home run didn't help.
yeah, like that's like I'm not gonna sit here and be like,
Mm,
Christopher Sanchez looks like he's kind of gotten back after he had that rough patch in July.
yeah,
And if we're
yeah,
gonna crucify Christopher Sanchez for having a rough July, early August, then we can rip like half the guys on the roster. Like let's be honest.
yeah. No, he had a nice start. Um, Schwarber and Turner still really aren't hitting, but Harper has been hitting better the last few games. His approach has been better. He's been walking more, which is good. Um, Marsh and Stott have been hitting better. Uh, it was a really nice come from behind win. What I was really encouraged by was also the bullpen. Orion Kerkering looked incredible yesterday. One pitch getting out of the Sanchez jam that he got pulled from, and then the perfect following seventh inning that was the inning before the Castellanos home run. It was good to see. What I want to see more from Kerkering, I think I want to see that sinker a little bit more because that slider, the sweeper, has incredible movement and great bite to it. But if he's throwing it like a baseball or two off the plate, which is not like a bad spot for it, but if that's your pitch 0 or whatever, people can just kind of take it out of the hand like I'm not swinging at a sweeper, and then you're not throwing it for strikes, and that's how bad innings can happen. That's kind of what happened in the playoffs last year. Like the sweeper was nasty, but he couldn't throw it for a strike, and he was walking guys, and then when he tried to throw for a strike, it would hang. But that sinker, he was really getting that outside corner really nicely. And if you're throwing that sinker for a strike, the sweeper plays off it so much better and becomes virtually unhittable if he's really kind of balancing those two pitches a little bit. So he was nasty. Strom's been good for the last like almost 2 weeks. Pitched well against big outs against Olsen. And then obviously Hoffman came in and slammed the door in the ninth. It was a really encouraging outing from a lot of different players yesterday. It was a very good team win.
Yeah, and I know he didn't really factor much, but I really think that I feel like I know they're like matchup dependent, but to me, like the guy that I trust the most to slam the door in the ninth is Jeff Hoffman, especially.
I agree. Yeah,
and that's not a knock on Estevez, but I think Estevez in like the eighth inning or even like the seventh inning and like against like the top of a lineup, like I feel like that's kind of his role. And not saying he can't be a closer, but I just feel like Hoffman's just better than him. It's not a knock on Estevez, just Hoffman is better.
Yeah, what I think the Phillies value, like because Rob said that the only reason he went with Hoffman is because he got Hoffman up in the eighth in case Strom had to get pulled, and he felt ready, and they felt it was a good part of the lineup. Meaning, I don't know, which I would again, I trust Hoffman as my most trusted reliever for sure, but I think the way the Phillies view it is that I think they like using Estevez for the ninth. Maybe this isn't the right argument against Hoffman because I don't think Hoffman really gets rattled either. But Estevez, while not being as good as Hoffman, what I think his best trait is as a reliever is his ability to kind of stay locked in and not have a meltdown. We saw it in the one road Braves game last week when he walked a couple guys, giving up some infield singles. Things were looking ugly, but he never really lost his head. You see it with a lot of relievers, honestly, that you walk a couple guys and all of a sudden it's like you can't find the strike zone, and you're just praying you got to throw something over the plate and hoping they get themselves out. Where Estevez is truly a pro's pro and isn't going to get that shaken up by it. He's just like a solid reliever. He's just not amazing, so it's not going to be shut down every time. But if a couple things don't go his way early in an inning, I don't think it's, the floodgates are open and he's not going to be able to get out.
Well, I think this was just kind of maybe not the knock or the concern.
It's almost like a bend don't break closer, which is kind of
well, that's the thing is with Carlos Estevez is like this is the only year he's been good. Like if you look at his stats,
career,
he's had like okay seasons. He is the closer on a bottom 5 team. He was a closer the last year and a half on a bottom 5 team in Major League Baseball. I mean, do you consider the Angels a bottom 5 team? Like I kind of do.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Okay, right. There's no pressure there. There's no pressure to close out a game when you're playing like, I don't know, like the Minnesota Twins in like a 4-game series where you got like demolished the first 3 and then they're just playing their backups or they're, you know what, like, you know what I mean? Like, and the thing that I have about Hoffman too is like Hoffman, a Caleb Cotham like lab creation, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like,
Failed starter when he got here. That the Phillies were turned him into this elite reliever.
and like we've seen like with the Phillies, like if you like listen to Caleb Cotham, like you're gonna be a beast. Like let's just be.
He's really been a producer of just.
If you have ability, that's my point. Like if
Yeah,
you
you
have
gotta have
ability,
some skill. Yeah, you
if
gotta
you
have
have
some skill
skill,
for
right?
sure.
Where like Estevez is just new here, and like I'm not saying that like I'm not trying to rip him and say like oh he's blowing off Caleb Cotham, but it's like if they resign, like he'd be a guy that I would like them to see maybe resign, and then give him that off season with the team.
Yeah, if they decided to, which I don't know. If they decided to bring him back, I don't necessarily think they are. I think they're going to prioritize extending Jeff Hoffman, obviously, this offseason. But if they do, I do think he would be better after a full year under Caleb Cotham. It's kind of like Strom, where like Strom last year was solid and we liked him. But, like, this year, it's definitely a new level of trust with him where he's definitely gotten better from last year, like, substantially. Like, last year, obviously, we were dealing with he was a starter for, like, a month and a half. Like, he was if it's so hard to remember, it feels like, but he was throwing, like, 4-inning outings to open up the season, and he was like, "I want 10 starts, 10 saves, and, like, whatever." But this year being more of that traditional reliever, he's definitely taken another jump. So, yeah, if they kept Estevez for next year, I think that he could get better. I just think that they like you talk about the pressure so far, and he's pitched in big games against good teams in the National League, etc. He really hasn't let the pressure get to him, it appears. Like, the pressure's totally on. It was totally on in that Atlanta outing out there, and he was able to kinda lock in and get out of the jam, and they won the game, and it was huge. But, like, the few times he had given up runs, like, they the game was kinda, like, almost over in both of them. They were already down or they were already up a bunch of runs, like, he was just pitching to get work, and he gave up on like, listen, if you're gonna give up your homers and blowouts, I could not care less. Just don't do it when it matters, and so far so good. So, um I'll be intrigued to see. I still think they're gonna be mostly matchup dependent. They might sorta kinda leave Estevez for the ninth more often than not, but I think there's gonna be spots that Hoffman might be the better solution, and they'll go and use that. Like, I don't think there's gonna be many a playoff games that the Phillies are like, "Oh, like, it's a one-run game. We don't have to use Jeff Hoffman today because we can use this." You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think they're gonna sit on not using Jeff Hoffman for the sake of like, "Oh, because we have Estevez." I think they're still gonna use their best guys for the best situation possible for them.
Yeah, well, I mean there is pressure on Rob Thompson, especially after your friend John
My
Middleton,
friend, yeah.
your friend John Middleton, like low-key basically passive aggressively called out the manager for not the team
Mhm.
not having a sense of urgency. And if he makes bad bullpen decisions, and look, every manager makes bad bullpen decisions, Michael. There's no like like every manager has
Mhm.
done that, right? But I also too, not every manager has a seemingly unlimited checkbook. Well, an owner that's willing to just get any
Spend money,
player
yeah.
exact either. So yeah, I it would just be like the reason the Phillies have just failed to win the World Series has been their offense, and the strength of the team has been their bullpen. So it would just be like devastating if they lost because
Yeah,
of
it's bad
bad
bullpen.
bullpen management, or someone just chokes.
Yeah, the what's a shame, I think, is that I feel as though this year, I and a lot of other fans, we were touting the bullpen as a strength of the team because it really was early in the season. Like, there were just the guys were pitching well, they were nails. It was everything you kinda had to ask for. The bullpen was great. And it's why when the trade deadline came around, there was, like, waverings, but it was still, like, a pretty solid circle of trust in the few guys, and they still added they added a guy that they use in high leverage, so clearly they felt like it needed to be added. But the bullpen has quickly dismayed a bit, to where I wouldn't view it as a strength anymore. Not that it's necessarily a weakness, but I don't think it's like a strong suit. Like I think when the playoffs
Yeah,
roll
it's not like
around,
the Mariners' bullpen.
yeah, no, I think when the playoffs roll around, obviously the offense needs to be good. Like they need to average almost like 5 runs a game because you can't go 3, 4 games in a 7-game series where you're only scoring 2 or less runs. Like, I'm sorry, it's just going to be impossible to win such a way. The team strength is obviously its starting rotation. You have 4 pitchers that you trust pretty heavily. Like 3 of them, you're probably going to trust to go deep into games. With Sanchez, like you probably trust him as much as you trusted Ranger last year, maybe a little bit more, which is like about 2 times through the order, which is fine for your game 4 starter. But if your first 3 guys, like you trust those guys to get you at least 6 innings in any sort of playoff setting. Um, so, it should make the bullpen's job in that way a little bit easier. And it would be nice if the offense, you're not forced to have to try to win 2 games in a series 2-1 or 2-0 or 3-2 instead of, and I know it's going to happen, but it can't happen as much as it's happened the last 2 playoff runs because, like you said, the biggest reason why they haven't won the World Series the last 2 years is because the series that they lose in, the offense has not performed up to standard for just enough games. Just too many games where you're asking your pitching to be legitimately perfect for you to have a shot to win the game. And that's just a very, very, very difficult way to live by.
Exactly, because when you have a great offense, and listen, statistically, the Phillies have a top 10 offense, top 5 offense.
And even you look at the guys, you believe in the guys that they have in the lineup.
But the concern is, has been kind of all season, despite last night, is like when they're down in a game late in the game, they can't come back and win.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's because it's like they mope sometimes. Like when things aren't going well early, and if they get down in a game, like the confidence kind of looks shot, and they start pressing and taking bad at bats. That's why yesterday's win was so encouraging, to be honest with you. Like they're now 4-0 in a spot where it just felt like the game was over, and they were able to come from behind with some big swings and some good at bats. So
I agree, and realistically, this team, it felt like when they go on this major cold streak, which they have done the last 3 seasons in a row, if you think about it,
mm-hmm.
They've always had it when they needed to lock in to basically make the playoffs. They've done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's annoying, but it's true. Even in 2022, when they got swept by the Cubs, and it was like, oh shit, and then everything was falling apart. But then they went and Nola gave you 6 1/3 perfect in Houston to help
and then
propel you to the playoffs.
Decided to
it got ruined.
in.
Yes, it got ruined.
They got ruined.
But even last year, they were stumbling early in September, and then they kind of rightened the ship to get to 90 wins, and it was nice. And this year, obviously, they've been abysmal to watch since the All-Star break, but they've won 5 of 6. The Royals series was a huge series win. Listen, they took 2 of 3 from the Astros. What happened on Wednesday? Wednesday. Could not care less.
I have 2 final thoughts before we jump into the picks. One's good, and one's it's not good. It's not a good one. Good thought. We'll just do the good thought, and then we'll close out before we go into the picks. Dude, these are both guys that we've maligned. Well, I've maligned. That the first one, Nick Castellanos? So you want to talk?
Oh yeah, I've maligned Nick Castellanos.
You want to talk about Jekyll and Hyde?
Mm-hmm.
The first April and May, he was the worst player in baseball. Let's be real, honest.
Yeah, I'll pull up his splits for you just to make it better. Keep going.
Since June, he's been a good player. I'm not.
So the OPS numbers April and March.
Are you pulling this up from Baseball Reference?
Baseball Reference.
Okay.
March and April, Nick Castellanos had in 31 games. Nick Castellanos had 2 home runs. His slash line, he hit 193 with a 258 on base, a 263 slugging, 521 OPS in the first month of the season. I mean, that's just putrid. That's really, really, really bad. 28 strikeouts as well in 31 games. Then in May, it was a better month in May. He had a little more power stroke coming in. He didn't have a double in the first month of the season. Then in May, he had 5 homers and 5 doubles. Still was only hitting 229 in that month, 287, 419 slugging, but his OPS up over 700, 706. Again, not great, but it was improvement. Still struck out 26 times. Then June came around, had a strong June, 276, 325, 486 for an 810 OPS, had 8 doubles, 4 homers, 25 strikeouts. Then the All-Star break came and he had a month of July that was pretty similar to the month of June where he didn't walk as much, but he definitely cut down the strikeouts. 7 doubles, 4 homers, 18 strikeouts compared to the 25, 26, 28 early in the season. 275, 305, 484 for a 789 OPS. And in the month of August, he's been incredible. 6 doubles, 4 homers, 18 strikeouts yet again, so the strikeout numbers are less. 292, 346, 500 slugging for an 846 OPS on the month. He has his season OPS up to 727, which again isn't great, but it's really being dragged down by that awful, really first like 2 months. But really that April was atrocious. He's been a good hitter since like May, June, and it's been kind of what we've needed from him. It's like he was never a guy that hit a bunch of home runs. Like he hit 30 home runs last year. He's only done it twice in his career, but he's just kind of hitting. Like he's gotten a lot better. He still chases at his normal breaking balls off the plate sometimes, but you kind of live and die with it because now that the rest of the lineup around him's
Well,
kind
his
of
play
hitting,
discipline has gotten better.
it has gotten better, and it's gotten a lot better, that's for sure. He still does it, but it's gotten better. But he sees strikes, and he's putting the bat on the ball, better quality of contact that are just resulting in hits and big hits, and he's been crazy enough to say, he's been the team's most consistent hitter since, like, June, which is just shocking to think about. But
I would say that with Castellanos, the reason why I think Dave Dombrowski likes him so much for this lineup is the Phillies have a lot of guys that when they're grinding out counts, they'll just take a really bad seeing strikeout.
Yeah.
Striking out looking, or where like Castellanos, because he's just going to swing. It's like, okay, I really need to make sure this is in the strike zone because I know this psycho is going to swing at it. Whatever, regardless of what I throw, right?
Yeah.
And that's way more dangerous than, a guy, but that I hate to knock this guy, but like you feel like with Bryson Stott, he gets caught looking a lot at strike 3, or
Marsh does too. It
takes pitches, or like you can throw a ball down the middle and they're not looking to swing.
Yeah, it's like he said it after it was Tuesday's game against Houston or whatever, that he was like, I don't really ever go up there looking for a walk. And like, there's nothing wrong with a walk. I like walks a lot, but and this lineup has free swingers. Trey's absolutely a free swinger. JT's more of a free swinger than not. Bryce is pretty free of a swinger more often than not. When he's going better, he's a little more selective. But Castellanos definitely a free swinger, and it's good that the guys around him are hitting a little bit better, so he sees more strikes. It's just more encouraging that it's the quality of contact hasn't totally died off again like it was early in the season. where it's like he's always been a guy that chases, always been a guy that strikes out a lot, always been a guy that doesn't walk a ton. But if you're hitting the ball more solidly, like when you're getting your pitch, if you're doing damage with it, just getting base hits, doubles, and he's not hitting a ton of home runs, but obviously had a big one yesterday. It's so much more valuable than like trying to totally change what Nick Castellanos is as a hitter, because we know that when they try to tweak things with him, it's hard. He's a guy that has kind of had this approach his whole career, and it's an approach that is dangerous because it doesn't necessarily age the best when your skill starts to taper. But when he's going good, it's still very, very nice. And it's just encouraging to see that when he's up there, I feel just a lot more confident than I did, honestly, the last 2 years when he came up to the plate. Even last year, even though it was better, he would come up to the plate and I would be like, it is more likely than not he does something that makes me wanna, scoop my eyes out as opposed to something that's impressive. Where now when he's up there, I'm like, "Listen, I know he might whiff at a pitch off the plate, brutally. I know he might just roll over 1 to third or short," but I just feel a lot better about his odds to get a base hit than I
Or if
usually
there's
did.
a man in scoring position, it's like with no outs, it's like, well, we can't walk this guy here.
Yeah, he's not walking, and I feel like he's got a decent shot to get a hit.
Especially now that Johan Rojas is no longer a guaranteed out.
Yeah, that's another thing because he hasn't played a ton. He's gonna actually be in the lineup today, Rob said, but when Hayes got back, he hasn't been playing him a ton, which I don't love. I don't think Hayes should play every day against righties. I just simply I
I
don't think
agree.
he's good enough to get that tout, and I think
Yeah.
Johan Rojas, despite his OPS or whatever, still not eclipsing 700 since he got called back up. He is hitting 300 and he's striking out significantly less, and that's all I can really ask for with him. He's fast enough that if you put the ball in play consistently, things are going to go your way. You're going to get some infield singles, you're going to get some blue hits, you're going to put some pressure on the defense because you run so well. As long as you're not striking out a ton, you're going to be more than fine as a hitter, and he's only going to, hopefully, is only just going to kind of keep getting better offensively.
Yeah, if he's like Kevin
Defensively,
Kiermaier, like prime Kevin Kiermaier, he's going to be
right?
very
And
serviceable major league player.
defensively, we know how elite he is. Obviously, it was Monday's game against the Astros in the 10th inning, making that diving catch to save a run before the Phillies ultimately walked it off. So, yeah, I'm not gonna say that the Phillies are back and everything's fine, but I am definitely a lot more encouraged um, since the last game of that Braves series. I feel a lot more encouraged since then. I felt good about the Royals series after that awful first loss. 2 really nice wins back to back. Obviously, they blew them out twice, and then winning the Astros series. This series is huge against Atlanta. The first one was massive because Morton's definitely the worst of their 4 pitchers going. You avoided Sale again, God's miracle. But
This is where I think Brian Snitker is just not a good manager. Is that why are you not putting Chris Sale against the Phillies?
What I don't understand is that you pushed him back the first time around, and I'm almost okay with pushing him back where it's like we want to give him more time because we know, we talked about it before, that his arm was like a ticking time bomb.
Paper mache.
Right, and it feels like he may end up staying healthy, which just is of course the Braves got that luck. But I feel as though he pitched.
I don't know, man. I would take his elbow exploding if it means Acuna and Strider aren't crippled.
Oh, for sure, and it's just if he pitched on Wednesday, Chris Sale did. I don't know. I feel as though Wednesday against the Twins, after you'd won the first two. I think
this is a good segue when we close out baseball talk.
Yeah.
Because if you're Snitker, you saw in the news that the Phillies flip-flopped Taijuan Walker and Christopher Sanchez.
Yeah, they wanted to give Sanchez an extra day.
In the division. You need to make decisions to not.
Yeah, I would have done what I could to have gotten Sale to pitch yesterday instead of. And again, it's not like Morton pitched badly per se, but I just would have made it a point that I would have wanted Chris Sale to pitch against the Phillies once in the last 7 times you faced them in a 2-week stretch, and the fact that he was avoided feels highly improbable.
Like, could you imagine Rob not pitching Wheels against the Braves at all? Like, he'd be getting crucified right now.
Yeah, it just doesn't it wouldn't make sense when I felt as though there was an opportunity to do it. And like that combined with leaving in Morton too long, it just really some questionable managerial decisions from Snitker to
I mean,
kind
he's
of.
an arrogant, shriveled testicle. That's what Brian Snitker is.
Yeah, and this series huge because yesterday was obviously the biggest one. I thought, it was like the quote unquote easiest one to get with Morton going. But if you can take 3 of 4, that would balloon the division lead back up to 7, right? If
8.
they're up, what are they up right now? They're up
by
6 after yesterday. So let's say they win today, they're up 7. They lose, they're up 6. They win again, they're up. Yeah, it'd be 7.
7.
It would be
Okay.
so they'd be up 7 games if they take 3 of 4. Not that it's impossible to blow a lead in a month like that. Obviously, as Phillies fans, you more so remember it more than I do in 2007. But if they get up 7 games with a month to go, I feel a lot better about the division as a whole than if it were any less. Especially if they're up 5 entering the series. They got up to 6 after yesterday. Like if they lose the next 3 and all of a sudden it's only 3 games, I'm petrified. If they split and it's it stays at 5 games, I don't love that. So I'd like it to, I'd like it to balloon and stick up at 7. That'd be nice. But well, what are you gonna do?
I think
you got to win the series. Got to win the series.
So we'll wrap up baseball talk. Taijuan Walker.
Yeah, it sucks, man, because
I have a theory on Taijuan. Like, it feels like every time he goes at the pitch, like he just gets smacked around.
This year for sure it's been.
But they just don't score any runs when he starts. So it's like, is he just a vibe killer? Is he like
might be a bit of a mood kill when he's out there.
I feel like after his he's the only one on this team that requested a trade in the last 2 years, right?
Yeah,
so I could see potentially that he might be a little ostracized from the clubhouse because everyone wants to be there to win a World Series, and you have Taijuan who didn't pitch in the playoffs, and now he's like, oh, I want to be traded, but you need to trade me to a contending team. I don't want to go to a bad team. It's very much like the reason you didn't pitch in the postseason was because Christopher Sanchez, the final 2 months of the season, completely outpitched you. And now you've come into this year, your diminished velocity. I don't know if it's due to an injury, Michael. Because if he had an injury, this is the perfect time to throw him on the 60-day injured list.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine this is I can't imagine Dave Dombrowski's I need to get every penny out of Taijuan Walker to justify my signing of him.
No, because I think there's Matt Winkleman on Twitter explained how there's more value in keeping him at this point because it's something like if you cut him some draft pick or some sort of compensation that you lose by getting rid of him or something early. I think for whatever reason, it makes more sense for him to hold the roster spot than it doesn't transactionally. But listen, it's a shame. I think we knew when they made the signing that it didn't feel great with the amount of term that he was getting. We thought that 18 million might have been a little high, but when we saw what other starters were kind of getting, we were like, just sort of feels like the going rate, and you're only asking him to really be your third or fourth, mostly fourth starter, and very quickly became the fifth starter, and very quickly became unpitchable. So it's a shame because I don't think he's necessarily ostracized. I think there's probably was some awkwardness after the playoffs last year, but like Taiwan Walker's like a really good dude, good person, good human that and like a good teammate. Like I know he made this stink about wanting to be traded or whatever,
I've
but
worked with people. This is going to sound so boomerish, but I've worked with people who, and in this, you've, and I'm sure when you've played sports as well.
yeah.
People, they're good people, but when they're in the team setting, it just doesn't work.
No, I do get that, but I look at him and when I think of Taiwan Walker, I think of like he's the guy on the top step like for the entire game of every game when he's not pitching. Like he is the top step where the players come in and out to hit and whatever, like just even throughout the playoffs when he was frustrated that he wasn't playing, like he wasn't in the dugout like pouting or whatever, like was being there, was being encouraged, all that sort of stuff. And I know that's bare minimum for teammates or whatever, but like the velocity dip is so strange, and I really don't know where it came from because even you look at clips from last year, he's hitting 96, with his fastball, with his sinker, and now he's like barely hitting 92. Like he's really kind of sitting 90, 91. And I don't know if it's an injury. I don't know if dead on. I don't know what occurred. But when you're only throwing 90, 91, that splitter just does not look nearly as enticing because the splitter's not like a slow pitch. No one throws a slow splitter. Like splitters sit like mid to upper 80s for the most part. So his splitter is throwing like 86, 87, and his fastball's only like 90. Like you really can just afford to kind of sit back on everything and not worry about getting anything blown by you because he just doesn't have that in him anymore. And I think for a guy like Taiwan Walker, if he wants to stay on this team, if he wants to be a contributing member on any major league roster, he's really got to put in a lot of work in the offseason, kind of reteaching himself a new way how to pitch. It's almost like you were given a brand new, not a new arm, but like you were given an arm that's not yours and you got to learn how to use it because trying to pitch the way he's pitched his whole career with a massive velocity
Maybe he
dip, it's
still
just
thinks
not
he's
going to
going to get
work.
traded, and he doesn't want to blow his arm out because if he blows his arm out, he's not going to get traded.
Maybe like listen, if he goes somewhere else and all of a sudden he's pumping 96 again, I think I'd be a little annoyed, and I'd be like shocked. I think
No, I would be very unsurprised.
really I would be surprised if all of a sudden the velo just kind of returned, because it's not playing his stock anymore. You might no good team's gonna wanna trade for you after what you're seeing, so, it's just it's a shame. It's a
Ego,
lot
man.
of things.
I
It's a
mean,
lot of
dude.
things.
The Phillies traded for Lorenzen at the deadline last year because they didn't trust him.
Mhm.
That's where it was such a. So I'm sure you probably heard like your dad talk about this pitcher before. He's basically this generation's Adam Eaton.
Yeah, I've been seeing it on
Basically, like
Twitter a
as
lot
soon as you
recently.
made the signing, it felt like this was a mistake, and you wonder why you made the move in the first place. And it kind of goes back to stupid money, but then it's like giving Taiwan Walker that contract, and then you kind of see this past offseason with the Phillies where they basically didn't make any moves until spring training when they signed Whit
Whit.
Merrifield. You like I get like they just don't want to make those big moves unless they're getting like Juan Soto or like a Trey Turner, but
Like,
like
it's with the
then why did you break your I don't know, your strategy or your approach to acquiring talent
yeah,
with him? Like it's just so weird to me.
because it never made sense, I thought, 4 years because of just the timeline of everything. You look at all the young guys, like, if Andrew Painter didn't have to get Tommy John last year, he would have been in the starting rotation this season. Like,
Yeah.
simply fact of the matter, would have been in the rotation. So and you made the Taiwan signing before the injury. So you made the signing with the thought that, like, your 2024 rotation was gonna be Wheeler, and I guess they didn't expect Sanchez to balloon, but, like, even then, he was never gonna be more than your 4th starter with Wheeler, Nola, and Ranger. So you were paying him 4 years to be a fourth starter that was like, okay, are you not gonna extend Nola? Are you not gonna extend Wheeler? Are you not gonna extend potentially Ranger? And, like, that's why you want the 4 years with him? Like, I never really understood the amount of years. I thought that didn't make sense for what their timeline was, and then as it proceeded, um, Christopher Sanchez obviously became great, extended him. Aaron Nola re-signed and extended. Zach Wheeler extended. We're kind of like waiting on the Ranger extension. It's just he's got no real place. Like Andrew Painter, we're hoping will be in the rotation as the 5 next year. There's other guys, in the system that could be a fit starter. Like in the off season this past year, if you were going to add a starter and it was going to be like a number 5, because it was going to be a number 5 starter, you had 4 guys. You weren't adding a starter to bump any of the guys you had down. You were really only going to be able to sign a guy to a 1-year deal. And if you were going to bring a guy in as a 1-year deal to be a starter, then it's really you're just like telling Taiwan to kick rocks before the season even starts. And like it just, I think it just put you in a bind where you were just subject to whatever it was. Like, you signed Turnbull to be like that swing starter, sixth man sort of thing. Obviously, his health evaporated very quickly due to his lack of innings the previous years, but it's just I don't get it. I don't know why they did it. Uh, it hasn't obviously, they haven't won a Taiwan start in a very long time. Um, I wouldn't say it killed them, and I think that it hasn't killed them because they were fortunate with how the other players turned out, that it turned out that Ranger hit another level being a very good pitcher, and, like, Sanchez became, like, very good all of a sudden as well. So they kinda bailed themselves out with it, where, again, if your 5 starter's bad, it's not the end of the world. No one there's, like, one team in the league that has a good 5 starter, and it's the Mariners, and everyone else's 5th starter kinda blows. So it just is what it is. But yeah, so Taiwan, him going to the bullpen, I don't expect him to pitch all very much. I think he'll pitch in. We don't want to do Jacksonville, Miami, right?
What do you mean? I was setting up the picks.
Aren't we just doing the 2 picks?
I thought we were doing the whole slate.
No, because we'll do a show next week to do the rest of the slate.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, we'll do Thursday, Friday, and then we'll do the rest of it. Yeah, but anyways, Taiwan in the bullpen. He's not going to pitch very much other than like a blowout or, starter gets bombed and you just need someone to eat innings, or it's a blowout in the 7th inning. You just need someone to finish the game. You'll throw in Taiwan Walker. But, other than that.
Dave Garrett stubs his arm when having
Exactly. Yeah. So overall, I think we're feeling better about the Phillies. Excited for the stretch run here.
I had a boomer complaint the other day. I know I had a boomer complaint. I watched Bobby Witt Jr. I'm like, when the hell have the Phillies produced a positional player of the, like, I'm not saying like a generational talent, but like, come on, man.
But a generational talent. Like, listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. I felt the same way from like 2019. I felt the same way from like 2018 until honestly now, where I'm watching all these guys come up, these international signings, just like the Juan Sotos of the world, Rafael Devers, and I was like, where in God's name is our guy? And listen, I think our guy's in there. I think it's Eduardo Tate.
Oh, I was about to say, well, Aaron Nola is like the best player they've.
Best homegrown player. And listen, Aaron Nola is great, but like you said, we're not growing Bobby Witts on trees. Like, we're not getting the guy that's going to be a perennial MVP candidate.
You know what's funny? I thought about this
having
too.
The best
like everyone
everyone
is like, oh my god, the Dodgers farm system is so amazing. Their 3 best players are guys they acquired from other teams: Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Ohtani.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Teoscar Hernandez.
Yeah.
Like they let their best homegrown player just walk in free agency, which is Corey Seager. Which now, in hindsight, being 2020, I'd rather have Corey Seager than Freddie Freeman.
I guess. I think they valued Well, the reason they didn't do it, I think they were, they felt, I think, better about Gavin Lux than what he turned out to be, one. But also, and I think they looked at Freddie as, like, even though he's getting older, a more reliable option, as, like, Seager's been a guy that's definitely had his fair share of injuries throughout his career that is definitely inherently risky. Um, and the Dodgers know it firsthand. Like, they were the team that had to experience him missing significant amounts of time um, in his prime years. But the Dodgers are such an interesting case because they do have a bunch of farm, and it's always like, oh, they're pitching, but they don't know how to develop pitching even a little bit, at least in terms of like health reasons. Like, we talked about this a little bit. Like, the Phillies, I think, should be honestly the league's poster child on how to develop pitching because obviously Painter, his arm was already cooked before he got here. Like, he was due to get surgery before he even got here. But
Yeah, but look at the guys they traded for Estevez. Like,
yeah, they're terrible now. Their ERAs have ballooned tremendously, and the Italian's actually going to go pitch in the major leagues now.
he's gonna get smacked around today.
Right. It's just like the Phillies teach guys how to pitch and teach guys like proper pitching techniques so their arms don't fall off. And the Dodgers do not do that. Like, they pitch to, like, oh, the most effective pitching you can think of. And that's
Well,
why
the Rays
every single one of their prospects,
like the Rays philosophy worked until the whole league caught up to the whole spin rate thing.
yeah, and it's like you look at the Dodgers and now all their top pitching prospects and young guys that they call up, they all have ridiculous elbow problems. I don't know, like Walker Buehler. It's kind of like a sad case how good he was when he first came up, and now he's just not the same.
Dude, it's gonna hit like crack if the Phillies sign like Walker Buehler and he's like an all-star again.
Oh my God, if they turn him around, that'd be awesome.
And then he's like, oh my God, Caleb Cotham just like he just gets it. He just gets it. Unlike the Dodgers.
It's true because listen, the Dodgers, their pitchers have been far from healthy. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like. Anyways, let's just get into football. Like, I know we got 2 picks we're gonna do. You see them at the bottom.
Yeah, 2 games. We'll talk about the games.
But real quick, like,
we have some signings
yesterday. Well, okay, because we took a week off because there wasn't really much to talk about last week. But like CeeDee Lamb extension, Jerry Jones, really upset. He actually had to pay his players like actual cash up front.
Yeah, it was a interesting interesting holdup. Apparently, that it was the years of the contract, and usually in most sports, really mostly in baseball and hockey, players really value. It's in all sports. Players value years on a contract a lot, especially when they're closer to like 30. They want more term. They want more guarantees that they'll have a contract. They want to be signed longer into their 30s. CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys were at a disagreement because the Cowboys wanted to extend Lamb to a contract that was about 5-6 years, was the reports, and Lamb was seeking a 3-year contract. He wanted to have an opportunity.
He's going to want the 5-year contract when the 3-year contract's over.
Like CeeDee, exactly.
Not the 5-year contract, and then
CeeDee is 25 years old. He turns 26, like not until next season. He doesn't turn 26 till April. So he wanted, the 3-year contract. So he has. He hits free agency when he turns what? He has this year. He'll play 25. First year of the contract. He's not a free agent after this year, so he's got 2 years left.
Well, that was the thing. Well, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 5th-year option.
Yeah, so his contract makes him a free agent when he is 30 years old. Now, as opposed to, him being like 28 or 29 when he hits free agency, and he wanted to be 28, 29 due for another contract, not 30. And listen, I don't think he's He seems pretty good. I think he'll be fine, just fine when he turns 30. But yeah, that was the disagreement, and they landed on 4 years in the middle. 4 years at a pretty penny, $136 million, making him the second highest paid receiver in the NFL behind Justin Jefferson. I think that's fair. Well, listen, we talked about it. They were always going to pay CeeDee Lamb. They were never going to, like, even though when we talked about, oh, if you had to pick two of Parsons, Prescott, or Lamb, that, like, picking the quarterback and pass rusher is probably the best allocation of resources. It's easier to find an elite receiver than it is to find.
After all these contracts that we're seeing for receivers, Michael, I'm not so sure anymore in terms of the pass rusher, because receivers are now being paid more than the pass rushers are.
Well, that's my point. It's like there's a lot more good receivers in the league than there are good pass rushers, I think.
But I think teams are now kind of like looking at it like pass rushers, sort of like the Eagles model, where they're like, oh, we don't need to go out and have one like super dominant pass rusher. We can aggregate it by having three like decent pass rushers, and we'll have guys fresh at the end of games.
Yeah. And listen, but there's also let's look at Cleveland, who has a great defense that's led by the best pass rusher. Listen, there's two sides.
Well,
to
like,
it,
what are the
sure.
odds of you getting a generational pass rusher like the Browns did?
The Cowboys have one.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's my point. It's like you have it, so.
Well, no, they're going to re-sign Mike. Well, this is where Jerry Jones is getting ripped, and hey, I'm all down for ripping Jerry Jones. Like, Jerry Jones tried to screw Micah Parsons over on his designation. He wouldn't have designated as a outside linebacker in a 4-3, which he technically is, but he also like rushes the passer nonstop.
I think it might have been vice versa. I forget, whatever it was. It resulted in Micah Parsons getting less money, and when you're not taking care of your players don't particularly like that. But you look at. Regardless, they decided to pay the receiver. They were never not going to, and it always felt like what Jerry Jones.
Sorry, Michael. Do you mind if I just make a note about the Cowboys and like why these contract negotiations are very tenuous?
Please.
So, as we've talked about before, Jerry Jones still thinks these are like your 90s Cowboys, the Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Deion Sanders, Charles Haley Cowboys, right? Where he's like, oh, hey, like, I'm going to pay you less, but like you're on the Dallas Cowboys, so you're going to get all the endorsement deals. You're going to get a job with ESPN afterwards. Like, you're going to make more money just being on the Cowboys than me actually like paying you money kind of deal.
There was no salary cap, so if it was,
and
it wasn't as awful.
And I think like back then, like, because they were winning, it was tolerated in a certain up to a certain point by some of those players. I think, kind of like the Patriots, like in the Bill Belichick in their prime, like they're going to tolerate being treated subhuman if they're going to win Super Bowls, right?
No, it's a good argument. The Cowboys today are just not the Cowboys.
But but the players are self-aware, where they're like, we're not winning anything with Mike McCarthy. We're not gonna win if the owner just refuses to go out in free agency and sign players like Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Chiefs, a big reason the Chiefs have won 3 Super Bowls in the last 4 years is because they've done a good job signing free agents and drafting. Mm-hmm. They just don't draft good players. Like, they got Joe Tunney from the Patriots. Joe Tunney is like an all-pro guard.
Mm-hmm. The Cowboys draft well.
And like they signed Drew Tranquill last year from the Chargers, and we're like, LOL, who's this Drew Tranquill guy? And he's playing out of his mind.
Yeah.
Like, that you got to do both, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and the Chiefs happen to have like the second potentially.
I mean, it's the best, like the best quarterback.
Like, he's right now like the third greatest quarterback of all time, who like is very,
very
close
quickly
to
climbing.
He's like very, very close to being the second best quarterback of all time, and then potentially in like 8 years could be the greatest quarterback of all time on their roster. The Cowboys don't have that, so when you don't have that luxury, you need to figure out ways to work around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Cowboys just refuse to do it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you look at Dallas, and it's like Jerry Jones. I do think, as a part of him, this went on for so long. We know how Jerry likes to keep his name in the media, likes to keep the Cowboys being talked about. Like that's true. And he like plays with fire because it gets talked about. But it was like he was always going to get paid. And listen, this is as recent as what, last year, and as recent as Zeke the first time around, that Zeke held out, made him the highest paid running back. Zach Martin held out, made him the highest paid guard. CeeDee Lamb held out, they made him the second highest paid receiver. It's like Jerry wants to keep his guys. He'll ultimately fess up the money to get rid of the immediate problem. And CeeDee Lamb was an immediate problem. He made it. I don't think he's making that deal thinking like, oh, now, I can do this with Dak and this with Micah. Like, I think he's doing it because he's like, okay, CeeDee's here now. I'll worry about Dak and Parsons when it comes up. And Dak's going to come up this year. They're going to have to make a decision on if they want to keep him or not. I think they are going to keep him. So they keep Dak Prescott for another year, or they extend him another contract, and then Micah Parsons comes up, and he's going to have to fess up and pay whatever. Like, it's just the way that you operate this business, not taking care of your players, not getting out ahead of time and making the contracts before they become bad. It's how you end up with a weaker roster if you're not drafting well. Like, the Cowboys are fortunate that they draft well because they're able to ultimately still have good players on the roster because they're on like rookie contracts, whatever, when they first get drafted, and they can afford to pay some of their stars big money and it doesn't totally obliterate them. Whereas you look at a team like the Eagles and the way that they're able to pay Jalen Hurts big money, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith big money, 3 offensive linemen get paid big money, Dallas Goedert doesn't get paid cheap, Saquon Barkley gets big money. Like Darius Slay gets pretty solid money out of his position. Like there's a lot of guys that make decent bit of coinage on this team, and it's because Howie gets out and does it early. You treat the players with respect. They are more inclined to not cause a huge fuss if they don't become the highest paid player in the league or whatever. Like it's many of things, many reasons why the Eagles are able to kind of have this roster that we're like, oh, there's so much talent, especially in the offense, blah, blah, blah. Whereas you look at the Cowboys and it's like those cap hits between Lamb and Prescott and like eventually Parsons, it's going to hamstring the team where they're going to be like, oh, well, we can't afford to do this. And they just got to keep relying on them hitting on draft picks if they want to stay relevant because, you were a few years away from CD, Dak, Parsons, and like kind of a bunch of crap. And it'll be interesting to see how it gets managed, if it's just going to be managed the way that the Lamb contract was managed, where it's sat on until it becomes an imminent issue of like, oh, CeeDee Lamb actually might not play if we don't pay him. And we need to fix that as soon as possible. And like that's kind of what it seems like has happened.
Yeah, the other contract news that broke last night.
The saga of Brandon Ayuk. It's finally over.
Brandon Ayuk signed
That was such an annoying saga too, because it was so like wishy-washy of, oh, who's going to trade? There's a trade in place with the Patriots, but he doesn't want to go to New England, and there's a trade in place with the Steelers, but there's something behind the scenes that is keeping it from going through. And
it's
the
called
Niners,
Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
it was so annoying. It was so dramatic. It was so soap opera.
As much as we despise Rat Boy, like of all the quarterbacks, except maybe like Drake May, but he hasn't even thrown a pass yet.
Right.
Like in terms of talent, like he's the best one of all.
Yeah, it's just like
all of the options.
It was very, very annoying how it all went down just for him to get paid $30 million a year. Like rumors that New England was going to pay him more. Like
Well, I think
I don't
paying
know.
Brandon. I think honestly, though, Michael, I think this is a smart move on the Niners' part
Absolutely, I think it's a smart move.
because I think you and I have talked about this before that we both think Debo Samuel is overrated, and realistically, like you've heard reports in camp, he hasn't looked good.
Hmm.
There's most likely going to be some sort of regression for him this season. Like, is he going to be bad? No,
Hmm.
but
Right.
like Brandon Ayuk's stock is going up. Debo Samuel, who, as we well know, talks a lot of crap, um, has I don't want to say he's like almost a system player in that Shanahan offense.
Yeah, Debo's a very versatile weapon that a lot of his value comes from the ability to line him up in various situations,
He's Percy
get him
Harvin.
get him matched up with line. Yeah, and he's a very great version of Percy Harvin. Like it's a
But
very
Brandon Ayuk is a much better wide receiver in terms of route running, catching, making plays deep down the field, where Brandon Ayuk knows how to get himself open, where like people are noticing in a lot of one-on-one drills, like traditional routes, like he just is getting like not
yeah,
looking good.
Debo. And it's just like and even in the preseason, like not getting separation. And it's like I think the Niners look at that and they're like, listen, if we move that's why I think a big part of the Niners was like if we're trading Ayuk we need Amari Cooper back. We need, George Pickens back. Like they needed a
Or like we need to
genuine
do a separate trade. Like they try to offload a third rounder to Denver for Cortland Sutton, and then the Broncos hung up the phone immediately.
right because it's like they would have needed to get an adequate wide receiver to fill the void of Brandon Ayuk. Because again, it's not that Debo's a bad player. It's just as a genuine true wide receiver, he's if you limit him to only being a true wide receiver, you're really taking away a lot of his value and you're just limiting your offensive potential with him. And it would tank things out for sure. And I think what this now does in San Francisco would be very interesting because now that Ayuk's pay taken care of, they have a big issue still. That
Oh, Trent
is
Williams.
Trent Williams, who's actively still holding out, been getting fined $50,000 a day for since, the start of camp or whatever. It's been a very long time. Listen, that's a stubborn MFer. Like that is a guy that is prideful and is not going to just fold, I think, for the sake of it. So I really think he's not coming unless he gets paid and becomes one of the highest paid tackles. And listen, if not the best, he is one of the best offensive linemen in the league, especially at the premium left tackle position. He's very, very good at it. Machine against the run, great against the pass. I don't know. He's old. He's made a lot of money in his career. If he wants to
Well, he's
get
also
paid
a
more,
cancer survivor, and I
yeah,
also
he's
think,
it's he's
and
got a
so
lot of
I think maybe he feels like I don't know, like I never survived cancer, so maybe he feels like I want to get as much money as I can now, and honestly, Michael, I think a lot of this stems from the fact that we know Brock Purdy is a system quarterback, and a lot of those guys know how important they are because when they were missing games last year, Brock Purdy played like a seventh round draft pick quarterback,
yeah. He was not looking as high and mighty when some of the guys were
which
out,
is
and
why
it's just
teams prioritize getting these like hyper talented QBs because when you lose players at like key spots on your offense, like receiver and tackle, they sort of offset the loss, like a Patrick Mahomes has done.
Mhm.
Right. Anyway,
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think he's gonna hold out like until he
oh,
gets
oh,
paid.
this is what's going to happen.
And man,
They're
there
playing the
are
Jets.
games next week, man. They play Monday.
If they play the Jets and lose, which
So you're banking on him. He's just not playing week 1. You don't
no,
think so?
oh no, this is what he's banking on. Rat Boy goes out there and then
Hassan Red or
gets terrorized by someone on their defense. Like it doesn't
not
matter
Hassan Reddick.
because their O line blows. Like that's like
Where
their O line isn't good. Like the Niners O line is not good.
where's Hassan Reddick? God, like it's a
Could you
perfect
imagine
week
if
for
he ends his holdout the day before and sack? And what if he hurts Purdy again?
that's what I'm saying.
Oh
He
my
hurts
god!
he hurts Purdy again, coming off the left side where Trent Williams would be, and you have like The Niners, like, there's just no way this happened. Like, he came back just to, I don't know. That's another holdout that's seemingly never going to end.
Yeah,
But
I don't think it's even worth talking about because it's literally
no,
the
but
same thing.
if you're the Niners, like, are you really going to just let him sit
You
out
can't
week
force
one?
him to play, Michael. He's gonna.
No, but my point is, you got to fess up the money. You got to figure it out. You got to do something. You can't have him not play. And you're like you were going to say, what Trent Williams is hoping is that if he sits out week one and the pass rush on the Jets is ferocious and Purdy gets sacked like 5 times and like 3 of them come from the left side and the Niners are going to feel obligated to pay him anyways. It's like I don't think that's going to make his price tag go up. I just think it's going to make the urgency of doing it come quicker and he's just going to get paid. So it's like if you're the Niners, are you really going to just sit here and wait it out with them and be like, listen, as long as we're not getting torched on that side of the line, we're not going to do it. But as soon as that happens, okay, we'll pay you. It just
Because
feels like
you
you're
know,
wasting
this is what's
everyone's
going to happen.
time.
They're going to leave Kittle in the block to protect whoever the backup left tackle is, because that's just kind of a logical football decision.
Mm-hmm.
Well, knowing Shanahan, that might not be true. Hence why Purdy's elbow exploded against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. But
Jalen Moore is currently slotted as their starting left tackle. He was a 5th-round pick back in 2021 who is listed as a guard.
I mean, when they played
there
when
you
they
go.
played the Browns without Trent Williams, I think Trent Williams was in that game. Like Myles Garrett
Debo not play too?
chewed up, like literally chewed up Brock Purdy and spat him out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like to your point, I don't like here's the thing with that Jets defense. It's like with Robert Saleh, who used to be the defensive coordinator for the
49ers.
So do you think he knows their offense and like what Shanahan likes to do? They can cook up blitzes and like confuse Brock Purdy. I think he can.
Yeah,
Why not?
and listen, they are.
Even if the Niners win that game, because for all we know, Aaron Rodgers is like Achilles can explode again.
Yeah, we
right?
do not know anything about
right. It could.
Yeah.
Right. It could happen.
Yeah.
Right. If Brock Purdy's sacked like 9 times and like they win like 10-7, like they're gonna pay Trent Williams the next day. Like it will end.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get in the picks and wrap up.
Let's get in the picks. We gotta get moving. Yeah.
We gotta get moving here. All right. Opening night. The Baltimore Ravens travel to Kansas City to play the defending Super Bowl champions. They've been Super Bowl champions for like what? The last like
a lot of months in a row.
Yeah. What did you send me on Twitter, by the way? It's not loading.
It's Eagles uniform decisions. It's a new combo that they're not wearing green because of Brazil, perhaps.
Oh God. Oh, that's exactly why they're not wearing it.
Yeah,
because
the Eagles are wearing black helmets, white jerseys, black pants. It's simply gonna look like pretty good. But I mean, I'm interested to see what the Packers are gonna wear.
I don't know what else. Like, I guess all white with the Acme.
Well, the Packers they can't wear white. Eagles wearing white jerseys.
Oh, maybe they're gonna wear the Acme jerseys.
They might just wear green. Anyways,
the Baltimore Ravens travel to Kansas City to take on the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs. Chiefs are only a 3-point favorite, Michael. I'm a little surprised by that, honestly, because the Ravens have got completely gutted this offseason, lost their genius defensive coordinator. As we know, John Harbaugh is like a CEO head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Not like Nick Sirianni right now. Their new defensive coordinator is, oh my God, Michael, I'm older than this guy. Zach Orr.
So young DC. Listen, this is an interesting line. I think it's the, I don't know, like Lamar tax, the MVP tax, like of keeping this only at 3 points. I think 3 is probably mostly fair. Like the Ravens are still a good team. I do think they've gotten a little bit worse, but I don't know. I think this is a fair line. It appears that Rashee Rice is not going to face any immediate legal action for the reckless driving stuff that he's been involved with, and a
I'm
lot
sure
of
Roger
legal issues.
Goodell was saying if anyone suspends Rashee Rice, they're going to be dealt swiftly.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like it's a mix of perhaps that, but also like nothing is imminent, and if anything's going to happen, like it would probably be after the season or later in the season, or he's unless he gets randomly placed on the exempt list, commissioner exempt list, which I don't think is going to happen. He's going to be playing, and he was simply a very good receiver for the Chiefs last year. Definitely turned into one of Mahomes' favorite targets as the year went on. And
he's been their best receiver since the Tyreek Hill departure, by far.
Yeah, and listen, that's a pretty low bar because most of them have been pretty bad, but he was pretty reliable, fairly reliable for them in the playoffs as well. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Chiefs here. Not thinking too hard into it. Just opening night following a couple Super Bowl wins, feels like just another page in the book of what I hope is going to be a good football game. Give me like a 24-20 or something. I'm taking the Chiefs.
I'm taking the Chiefs as well. I don't know, the whole Zach Orr, new defensive coordinator. They actually lost their D-line coach to the Dolphins, Anthony Weaver. He's their new defensive coordinator as well.
Mm-hmm.
This feels a lot like Sean Desai, where you have a guy who's really young. They might try to have him run McDonald's defense as well, but he's missing a bunch of players that McDonald had. And like they still got some elite defensive talent. It's just like we've seen this from the Ravens before. They have a great season, they fall short, they get gutted, they have a down year. It's watch, rinse, repeat. And I think if you're like, obviously if you're doing your fantasy drafts, I would not start Zay Flowers. I am very much like, do not start Zay Flowers.
I mean, they did lose L'Jarius Sneed.
But Trent McDuffie is like one of the most underrated
Trent McDuffie's incredible. He's
defensive players. I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, you and I are football nuts. We know how good he is. But, like, someone's going to think, like, oh, no, L'Jarius Sneed. I think that's going to be a rough night for the Ravens offense.
Interesting.
I think it is. Not because I don't think Lamar is good. I think we're going to – I can just see Twitter. Everyone's going to be like, Lamar – once again being screwed. Ravens refuse to go out and get receivers for Lamar, like a dependable veteran. And then I wouldn't be surprised if the deadline, if they acquired like Devontae Adams, if he's available.
Yeah, I mean that would be something. But yeah, both of us going with the Chiefs. I mean, it's just one of those things. I don't know the exact record of teams that won the Super Bowl, their Week 1 record, and like that home standalone Thursday game, but I can imagine it's fairly good.
Well, remember last year? So I think some people. I mean, we're looking at Vegas Insider. Everyone's picking the Ravens. I'm going to tell you why I think everyone's picking the Ravens is because last year the Chiefs lost to the Lions, and
I forgot about that. I was trying to think of what it was. I actually forgot.
It was such a fluky win for the Lions. Not to take away anything from them, but like,
nah, you can take it away. F those guys are so annoying.
But
it was fluky. Kadarius Toney like gift wrapped them 7 points.
And there was no Travis Kelce.
Yeah, like I don't know, and they won by a point. So
I think you're gonna. This is gonna be a Travis Kelce. I think it's gonna be a Travis Kelce game because he's gonna have 10 days off afterwards anyway. So if you want to and it's the first game. Like, are we gonna load manage him week 1? No. He's getting load managed like week 7, week 8, week 9, right?
Yeah, he's gonna get like a fair touchdown. Yeah, feel good about the Chiefs. Moving on to Friday night in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is drawing many a controversy for a plethora of reasons. I think what's like actually probably the most concerning thing in the league's eyes is like the wildfires going on, where like the air quality is like not safe potentially. And like if that's really bad, maybe there's some sort of I don't know, altering to the schedule. I don't know. Regardless,
Cancel a game and then play it in Philly at some later
like
date.
right, like potentially. But anyways, uniforms are out. The Packers are wearing green. They're wearing their normal green and yellow. Granted, that is like the color of the Brazil flag, so maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it's fear-mongering. I don't know what it is, but the Eagles are not wearing any green. They are wearing black helmets, white jerseys, black pants. But anyways, the game itself, the Eagles are 2.5-point favorites at home. They are the home team in this game. I look at the Packers as a team that I believe is a good team. I think they have a good chance to be a top. I think they have a good chance to be a top 2 seed in the NFC. I thought they really came on strong at the end of last year. Obviously, they had a very strong playoff win in Dallas and, you know, very, very unfortunate circumstances that led to them not beating San Francisco. It felt like there were so many dropped interceptions and so many wounded ducks that just happened to fall harmlessly to the ground that it just felt like Brock Purdy should have thrown like 4 picks against Green Bay in the divisional round. And fortunately for him, like none of them got intercepted. Um, but at the same time, if Kirk Cousins doesn't get hurt last year, the Packers might not even make the playoffs. Regardless, the Packers, I think, are a very, very good team that is going to be playing a uh, what second place schedule. You know, obviously they didn't win the division last year, so I think that plays favorable to them. And I think they're going to be a good team at the end of the regular season. This game not being in Philadelphia definitely hurts the Eagles. I think, this is a game that they would have wanted to have at home. But I look at the Eagles and I get excited. Obviously, I personally think Dallas Goedert is not going to play Friday. He's dealing with an oblique injury, and like I don't know. That just is an oblique injury is like one of the worst injuries like ever. It is always a long time. It like feels like it never heals. It's just always bad. So I'm not sure if he's going to play, but obviously the Eagles have a lot more firepower on the offensive side of the ball to be able to, I think, subsidize that.
The Eagles also keep in mind too, when it comes to players with injuries, they're very much a hyper cautious.
Yeah, conservative, I was gonna say.
Right. Very cautious. I think we're gonna know way more next week. But to your point, Michael, they did sign 2 tight ends to their practice squad in
Right.
EJ Jenkins and
Jack
Stoll. And Jack Stoll, well, he doesn't know the system because he just
knows the players, knows
right, but he knows, he's worked with the team before,
Yeah.
Real quick, what'd you think of that Jalen Hurts quote about Jason Kelce before we dive into the game here?
Yeah. What the Jalen Hurts quote about Kelce, you said?
Yeah, well,
I think that was
he's not very good at saying these like minor little things.
Because you said it too in the DM. I were like, oh, this is gonna get overblown, and it's like for a man that's as like poetic, I'll say, as he is, the way he seems to have such a way with words, and like people joke that he's like a walking Instagram caption, all the sort of stuff that he says that's really inspirational and feels like it's out of a book, and it's like he rehearses his lines. When he has to say something that's like you said, like it's something simple and like doesn't need to be overblown, he tends to like paint such a picture that everyone's like, wait a minute. And it happened with the Sirianni thing in the offseason. It's happening here with Kelce, where I don't think he was meaning it in any sort of way, like where he was like, yeah, like I wanted to, like, I want that responsibility. I wanted to learn all that sort of stuff, but I was told, like, not to worry about it because, like, Jason handles it all. And, like, so it kinda
I mean, it's to
delayed
me,
me picking
if
up all that
anything,
stuff.
I felt like the interpretation is going to be that he's taken a dig at Sirianni, that Sirianni doesn't think he's intelligent enough to do it, and now
Oh, is
he's
that what it is?
that's the well
I
he wrote an article on the, I think it was the Players Tribune or somewhere. Jalen Hurts did, where basically like the trials and like what it's like being a black quarterback in the NFL and their
Mhm.
perception that they're not as intelligent as the white quarterbacks, or everything that they do gets hyper criticized, where like
Which
Josh
is
Allen
it's true.
plays
It's
where like
exactly
Josh Allen plays like an idiot, and like Tony Romo is like, oh my god, Josh Allen, oh my god, he's
like he's a gunslinger. It's like you
yeah,
live and
well,
die.
like,
But
or like,
it's
well,
Lamar
Josh
makes it
Allen
bad.
threw that interception because he's trying to win.
Or it's like he's got such a strong arm, but it's like if Lamar makes a bad decision, it gets blown up as like a can't throw the ball sort of thing. And it
I,
just
and I think that's where like, when Jalen Hurts, I mean, we saw it last year. Like he should have been criticized, but then you get people like take merchants like Nick Wright, who was
Mhm.
like, going off the deep end, with his takes, and then yeah, obviously, like, you have the trolls,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that is sort of like, people think I'm basically stupid and I don't know how to read. Basically, the knock, because there was a report last week where someone's like, oh, like a defensive coach said, well, if you just zero blitz Jalen Hurts or drop everyone back into coverage, he doesn't know what to do.
Right. Right. And it's
Where we
just
saw in 2022 when teams would zero blitz Jalen Hurts, he had like a quarterback rating of 140. It wasn't necessarily Jalen Hurts himself; it's that the offense that was being called was dog shit.
yeah, it was unable to beat a zero blitz because of just poor route trees and etc. So I don't I'm 100 I'm in pretty strong agreement. Like I feel like another way that that gets spun is that like, oh, Jalen Hurts was frustrated with Jason Kelsey being so involved, where he wanted to be the leader and and like be in charge of stuff that quarterbacks usually are, and like you said, an insult to his intelligence or whatever. Where
What
I
veteran
I don't
center helps young quarterback
like. I think
be better at
I think
football?
both of those takes and thoughts are just incorrect, and I think you agree that it's like the real answer is that Jason Kelsey is like a Hall of Fame center, and part of what makes him so special is that he is able to recognize pass rushes and other defensive sets so well coming out of the huddle and at the line of scrimmage, and is able to direct traffic so effectively that it's like a luxury not having to put that on your quarterback
Yeah, but keep in
on
mind,
top
Jason
of
Kelsey's
everything
just a
else.
player. Like Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and even Mike McDaniel, like read the defenses like for their quarterbacks
Yeah, like
and
they're
their play
talking in
calls.
his ear saying like, "Oh, we're gonna look, you know where you're looking, Ayuk or whatever," all that sort of stuff. Where like all this was is like it's Kelsey going up the line of scrimmage and is knowing he's shifting the offensive line coverages and stuff where it's like, Jalen, like you have authority to say something, but like if Kelsey makes the decision, like that's kind of what you're just doing. And I don't know. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I think that's helpful. And do I think Jalen is capable of handling that this year? Absolutely, I do. Like clearly, it's maybe there's going to be some learning curves with a few of the other stuff. Maybe they take a delay a game or something here or there extra, but I don't think it's by any stretch of the imagination something that's worth it being talked about or blown up already as it kind of was a little bit. It's just annoying. It just is what it is. But anyways, back to the game at hand. Goddard being hurt. It'll be the first game without Kelsey in a very long time.
Since 2014.
Yeah, first game of Saquon Barkley's career as an Eagle should be exciting. I think the Eagles are going to score points. I don't know what the field is like in Brazil, if it's going to be like, you know, what London fields are like, which are a little more slick. If it's going to, I have no idea what to expect in terms
Well,
of.
they're playing in a soccer stadium, Michael. So odds are it's going to be, if it's raining, it's going to be like London. So it's going to be very
Mhm.
slippery. Um, I would hope that the equipment staff is going to try to, the Eagles haven't played a London game since 2018, right?
Yeah,
Where
against the
I
Jags.
imagine that they maybe talked to other teams or did a
The
research.
weather should be fine. I mean, looking
They should
ahead,
treat this like they're playing
it's not
like the
supposed to
They
rain.
should learn what the mistake they made in the Super Bowl with the turf or the
Yeah, the field
field
should not be
and just treat it like that.
slippery. Yeah, field should not be slippery. No precipitation this week. Most Mostly sunny. It's not even gonna be, like, that hot either, like, high of 82, low of 64 on Friday in Brazil, like, that's pretty comparable to, like, here. Um, so, seemingly the conditions should not be any sort of effect. Obviously, you're playing in Brazil, so that's different. That's new, you know?
I
I
mean,
Listen, we know I'm picking the Eagles, like, we can beat around the bush and mess around. I do think the Eagles are gonna win. Um, week 1, it's a big spot. I think they know how they ended last year, taking it personally, taking it like, we can't let that happen again. It was embarrassing. It was highly disappointing for everybody involved, all this sort of stuff. So I think that, they want to come out strong. They want to send a message. They want to set the tone on national TV, big spot. I think it's more like, you want to assert yourselves as, okay, we are a top team in the NFC again. Like, last year was a collapse, but that's out the door. They want to make a point. So I'll take the Eagles minus 2.5. I do think it's gonna be close. Again, I think the Packers are good, but I, think the Eagles could take care of business, win by a field goal, win by a touchdown, something like that.
I'm going with Green Bay to
Oh
cover the
man.
2.5. Um,
Oh man.
the, the reason
That's not
why,
fun.
when you have two new coordinators, like brand new coordinators,
Yeah.
um, there's going to be some growing pains. I mean, unless Kellen Moore is this like super genius, which he could be. I'm not saying he's not.
Mhm.
But my concern is going to be that the Packers are going to give Josh Jacobs like 35 touches. They have no
Mhm.
depth at running back, and it's week 1.
Mhm.
And the thing with this Eagles defense is there's concerns about the pass rush, and there's concerns about them stopping the run. That has been the kind of the weakness of the Fangio defense is the ability to stop the run. And look, the Packers, like LaFleur, loves to run the ball. He's not like a 50 pass a game type guy. He's never been that. And I think it's going to be a close game. And I think they're also the Packer. I don't think this is going to be like a Jordan Love, like 5 touchdown, like masterclass. I think
Mhm.
they're gonna feature Jacobs and they might just try to run the clock out. And I think you might see early in the game maybe some issues with Hurts and Jurgens just snapping the ball because it's a
Mhm.
new center. You're
Yeah.
playing the Eagles did not play any of their starters in the preseason for the most part.
Yeah, not on
And
offense, yeah.
not on offense, and I would not be surprised if they look rusty the first like half, and that might contribute to them losing the game.
Mhm. Yeah, it would listen, I think there's definitely an argument to be made that the new coordinators, that's the biggest thing. Like, new offense, actually using it in game, getting used to whatever situations. Hopefully, there's no, like, continuity issues with, like, the brain trust. Like, I hope they're on the same page levels of aggressiveness and, like, going forward on certain things, all that sort of stuff. I would not be surprised if there's some kinks to work through. Like, I look at this, like, I'm so shaky on the defensive side of the ball that I feel like I can't claim things because I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I feel fairly good about the Eagles' interior defensive linemen against the run. I feel like not great about the edge and the linebackers against the run. I don't feel amazing about the interior defensive linemen for the pass rush, like at least some of
I mean,
them.
there's one. I mean, the silver lining is that the Packers defensive coordinator, his name's Jeff Halfley,
Mm-hmm.
and he's never in the pros. He's never coached above defensive backs coach. He was the defensive backs coach for the San Francisco 49ers from 2016 to 2018, where Michael famously those teams blew chunks.
Yeah, I don't think those teams were
And
great.
he was the Boston College head coach the last 4 years, where Boston College was just bad.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And pretty tough first assignment. Your first go out, you're have to stop Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, and Dallas Goedert potentially if he's healthy.
Yeah,
that's not a very good first assignment. So yeah,
might be a high scoring game on there. So all right, everybody,
thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, Labor Day weekend. Have fun. Watch college football tomorrow. Take care.